What is up, guys? It is DMG here, and today we are going to be going over some of the tactics that I used during the weekend where I got elite. So a lot of people, at least during stream, asked about this. They wanted to find out what some of my tactics were, what some of the instructions were, what players I used, etc. So we'll start off by saying some of the tactics I use. In fact, I would say actually a lot of the tactics I use are pretty basic stuff, ones that I think a lot of players actually use. It's just that I use a variation of them to kind of determine how the game is going, and then I switch to whatever I need to switch to. So it's finding your tactics, finding instructions is important, but a lot of people actually use very similar tactics, at least the majority of people, right? There are pros and there are certain people who change it up a little bit, which fair play to them, but I think the majority of people kind of use similar tactics, right? 4-2-3-1 type stuff. So a lot of people, again, have the same tactics and instructions, but it's recognizing when to switch and what to switch to is important. It's also important to recognize what players you actually need in your team, because that's also important, right? It's not just, having the best possible players in your team. It's about having the right players in your team, which, they often do overlap with something, having the best players you can, but it's also important just to find the right players. This is the team that I used during our Premier League. Actually, for the Premier League, I would go with Hazard here, and then I would go with Ozil here. And this is what we used during our Elite weekend for the Premier League team of the season. And then for the Liga, I actually went 14-2, but I didn't have time to play all the games based on just some family events and Mother's Day and all those things. So during that time, right, during that weekend, this was the team I was using with Del Piero here for some games. For I think it was 14 games, and then Ozil for the other two. And in that time, I went 14-2. So again, I was on pace for elite, but again, it was just more didn't have time to play, so I stopped it at gold 3. So the reason why I like this team is because for a few things. One, it's very versatile, right? You can have players who can play on the wing, who can play at left mid, right mid, specifically Thierry Henry and Garrincha. You have Henderson and Goretzka, who can be center mids and can be defensive mids as well. You have players who can be both strikers and attacking mids with Del Piero and Mahrez. So it's a very versatile team, and that's something that, initially at the start of FIFA, you can't really do that often, just because players like that are going to be more expensive. But near the end of FIFA, like right now, you're going to be able to find players who are going to be versatile, which is important to finding or switching tactics and formations in game. Some of the tactics I used, and I used 3 different tactics here. So I use 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, and then the 3-5-2. So what I normally start out with, in game, the very first minute is I usually go to the 4-2-3-1. And the reason I do that is because it's usually the safest. It's one that I can just start with and just kind of get to understand my game a little bit and kind of see how my play goes against my opponent. But then I can also see what my opponent does, and it's very sound defensively, right? It's very sound defensively formation. So I can just kind of see, 15, 20 minutes, kind of see what my opponent does. And then if I need to switch, I can. If I, have made a few chances or, got a goal or two, then I'll just stay in this formation. Because again, it is a very good formation. So again, I do start in the 4-2-3-1. This is what I do. I go balanced for defense and offense. I used to be, pressure on heavy touch, but I've noticed that balance is actually just as good, just because, a lot of people sit back, a lot of people counter, and when there's pressure on heavy touch, you tend to get hit when people are just kind of passing it around the back. They can pass it to the goalie, pass it to one of their defenders, and then kind of quickly hit you on the counter. So when you are balanced, you don't have that as often. For width, we're going to be a little bit more narrow, just because, again, a lot of people do 4-2-3-1. A lot of people are going to go a little bit more narrow. And then for depth, I like to play a little bit higher depth. We will not be doing, 2 depth, 3 depth stuff. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be doing drop back or anything like that. If I'm playing a player who's much better than me, and I can tell they're better than me, but I somehow managed to be winning in the 80th minute by a goal, then that's one thing to go back, play low depth, play, drop back. That's one thing. But our game is not to play drop back, not to go 1 or 2 depth, because that's not fun, right? We actually want to score, we actually want to attack and try to enjoy the game. So our tactics initially are never going to be drop back, never going to be low depth. So we do want to have the depth up a little bit higher. If you're not as great defensively, you can maybe go down to 4 or 5 depth, but for me, I prefer 6, even 7 depth for a couple of the formations as well. And then when we go for the attack, again, just going to be balanced offensively. The width is just going to be, I think that's the default, is just 5. And that's mainly because I've noticed that my left and right backs, you'll see in the instructions, I don't have them on stay back. So they go out wide, while the left and right attacking mids tend to push in just a little bit more. So I do, want that width, so then my left and right backs do gotta go out wide a little bit more. For players in the box, I only do 4, just because I feel as though if I do more, if I do 5 or 6, then everyone's going to rush into the box. Everyone's going to be right where the goalie is, and everyone's going to be on that, the back defensive line. And there's no one going to really be back for a cutback, right? There's no one I can kind of drop it back to. Everyone's going to be in the same spot, near the penalty spot, or even further up, which for me, I always find really, really annoying when there's 3 or 4 players who are in that penalty spot, or, even further up, who are all being marked by 1 or 2 defenders. So I have 1 or 2 kind of in that penalty spot or a little bit further up, and then I have others who are a little bit further back or other players I can drop it to. And then corners and free kicks, I tend to only do 1 on here, just because for corners and free kicks, I notice I get countered more, and I don't want that. And it's also a little bit harder to score this year on corners and free kicks. So, for me, I don't want to get countered, and I don't ever really score from corners or free kicks because they're a lot harder this year compared to last year. So to me, I don't really see the point in having more in the box, again, unless it's 90th minute, you need a goal, things like that. But in a normal situation, I don't have many players in the box. So again, I do use that formation just at the start to see, how my play goes against my opponent and what my opponent does. So the other 2 I go against is 4-4-2 and 3-5-2. So I'll start with the 4-4-2, and I use this if I notice some space in the middle. So this is mostly going to be against a 4-2-2, so there's a lot of space kind of in that middle, right, because they have the 2 defensive mids and then they have cams, so that space in the middle is going to be very vulnerable. Same thing for a 4-4-2, I've noticed. So the reason what I do here, again, balanced 4 width, depth is going to be higher up. Again, if you're not as good defensively, you can switch that to 5 depth or 6 depth, even 4 depth as well, but we're not going to say go any lower than that because we aren't scumbags. So we'll keep it at 4 or 5 if you're not as good defending, 6 or 7 if you are able to do so. Again, for offense, width, players in the box, everything's going to be the same here. I'll do the instructions for everything, but I wanted to explain, when to use certain formations. And then for the 3-5-2, this is when the opponent is very drop back, 1 depth, it's very, very, very difficult to break them down. And the reason why this is actually very good is because the left and right mids offer width. You have 2 strikers, you have a cam, you have center defensive mids who can kind of come up and offer you a drop back if you need it. So you have 3 players in the attack, you have outside left and right wingers essentially, and you have defensive mids who can come up and play center mid. So you're really putting a lot of players forward, and which obviously you need to if you need to break down players who are 1 depth drop back. So for this, I actually do 3 width here, so it's even more narrow than in the past. And the reason for that is because we only have 3 center backs, so we need them to be compact. Plus, we have the left and right mids on drop back, so it's essentially defensively almost a 5 at the back formation. So obviously with 5 at the back, you can allow yourself to be more narrow because there's going to be 5 defenders. So that's going to be very good for us. A depth, again, it's going to be 6 or 7 if you are good at it. 5 or 4 if you're not so good at it. And then for offense, or for attacking, again, balanced, players in the box, corners, these are going to be the same, only 2 or 1 for corners, free kicks, players in the box, going to be 4, like I mentioned before for the reasons. But then for width, it's actually only going to be 4 because, again, I've noticed that for the left and right mids, I want them to be shaping in a little bit more because, as I mentioned for the 4-2-3-1 narrow, you have your left and right backs being able to go out wide. You have that. For this, you don't really have any outside backs, right? You have your left and right mid as the furthest out wide players. So personally, I want them a little bit more closely in, just so then they are not completely isolated on the wing. So the reason why I went through that first is just understanding what you want to do and seeing where your opponent is doing, so then you can switch. Now, obviously, if you're doing really well, and, even if your opponent has a certain formation that I mentioned you should switch against, if you're doing well, don't switch, right? If something is working, if it's clicking, if your players are dominating, if you're dominating, maybe even if it's 0-0, but you've had a lot of shots, but none have gone in, don't switch, right? If something is working, do not switch it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Going into the instructions now, this is going to be for the 4-2-3-1. The left and right backs, or the back line is going to be all default, but the left and right back is going to be overlap for both of them. Again, we have left and right attacking mids. I want them to be on the outside a little bit more, just so then if we do happen to go out wide and we do pass it in, it's going to be the left and right attacking mids receiving the ball from the left and right backs, which is obviously good because if we're attacking, we want our attacking players on the ball. So that's why I go overlap here. For the left and right defensive mids here, I do stay back while attacking and cover center. I did at one point have cut passing lanes. However, I noticed when I did that, they would be a little bit out of position. I have to drag them a little bit more. So I just try to do stay back while attacking and cover center. And again, the reason I do that is just because when I had them on man mark intercept passes, they would stray from their position or from where I would want them to be a little bit more often. Attackers, we have the left and right attacking mids on get into the edge of the box, get into the box for crosses. And the reason I have that is because, let's say you're running down the wing and you want to do a driven pass. You're able to actually do that because it's not just your striker there. What I've noticed is, let's say I have the ball with Garrincha running down the right wing, get inside of the box. Let's say Del Piero is on the edge of the box, Mahrez is at striker, and they're both covered, right? What I've noticed is Thierry Henry comes in and essentially is going to be sitting in between Del Piero and Mahrez. So your left and right attacking mids are going to be there for the cutback pass, which is really, really helpful for me. I've noticed a lot of goals being scored when I go down the wing and cut it across. It's normally my left or right attacking mid instead of my actual cam and striker. For the cam, I have them on stay forward, and this is actually more of a personal thing for me, mainly because I've noticed if I don't have them on stay forward, if it's just unbalanced, they drop back to left back or left mid for some reason. I have not really noticed anyone else doing that or having that problem. It's literally just for me, and I'm not sure why that is. So I just have them on stay forward, so then, they don't do that. And what's also nice is if I have them on stay forward, they tend to make runs forward past the striker, and then the striker and the cam tend to play off each other really well. So for that reason, for Del Piero being on stay forward, that's why I have my striker on balanced everything, and that's where I want to talk about what players you need for the striker and center attacking mid. These two guys have to be your best attackers. They have to be good at passing, they have to be good at shooting, good at dribbling, most responsive on your team. These guys have to be the stars of your attack. And the reason for that is because your striker obviously has to be good at shooting and dribbling and pace, but because your center attacking mid is going to be making runs forward past them, they have to be good at passing. And that's why your cam also, again, has to be good at dribbling, responsive, pacey, good at passing. Because they're going to be making runs past that striker, they have to be good at shooting as well. So your striker and your cam essentially have to be your best attackers, right? They got to be pacey, good at shooting, good at passing, responsive with dribbling, 4-star, 5-star skills, 4-star, 5-star weak foot, anything like that. For the 4-4-2 here for the instructions, this is where actually I followed Run the Foot Market's instructions. I got these instructions from him specifically, and I did switch it up just a little bit. So I'll mention where I did switch it up. So left and right back, in fact, just the entire defense in general, it's just balanced everything. Nothing changes for the defense, right? For the left and right mids, we have them on get in behind, just so then they kind of act as wingers, which is pretty nice. For one of the strikers, we have them on stay central, get behind. For the other one, we have them stay central, false 9. And that's good because I realized that the strikers and the center attacking mid, or center mids, right? There's no center attacking mid to kind of link those players up. It's just striker, center attacking mid. So there's a pretty big gap there. So you need one of your strikers to be false 9, so then they can link up that play between the midfield and then your other striker. Now, you can decide who it's going to be. You can, it could be, for me, it could be Mahrez or Del Piero, either one for me. But, for you guys, depending on who your players are, it's going to be someone who's a little bit more of a playmaker. Now, at this point in time, it's going to be better if, you have two strikers who are at least great at passing, great at shooting, and kind of good at everything. Again, because you want that versatility for the 4-2-3-1 and then, switching all the other positions. But if you just use the 4-4-2, make sure the striker who's that playmaker is going to be false 9. For the two center mids, and this is where it's going to be a little bit different compared to run the foot markets tactics and instructions. He has one on stay back while attacking, cover center, which is, what he said to do. But the other one, he actually just has on balanced attack and balanced crossing runs. It's just going to be cover center for one of the center mids. And that's good to have because I've noticed that, it's going to be nice because that center mid can provide a little bit of support, so a little bit more support for your strikers. However, for me, being it's Goretzka with high medium work rates, I have to have him on stay back while attacking and stay on the edge of the box for crosses, because I noticed with his high medium work rates, he got forward further than the strikers. And not just one or two times, but he did it consistently. So I noticed that I'd rather have him on stay back while attacking, because then I can drop it back if need to, and I already have one of the strikers playing as a center attacking mid with that false 9 instruction. So I have both center mids here on stay back while attacking, cover center, and then I have the one who's a little bit more attacking on stay on the edge of the box for crosses. That way he doesn't sprint into the box. And then finally for the 3-5-2 instructions here. So center backs, just going to be balanced everything. Left and right center defensive mids, cut passing lane, stay back while attacking, cover center. It's going to be nice. And I mentioned for the 4-2-3-1, I don't have them on cut passing lanes. I just have them on the balanced. And the reason for that is just because on here, there's going to be more defenders, right? There's 5 essentially at the back instead of 4, so we can kind of get away with just kind of running around and leaving the area a little bit. Plus, it's going to be more narrow, so they're not going to be straying from their area as much either. And I mentioned it's going to be 5 at the back because we have the left and right mids on comeback on defense. So you really want them to be high stamina, high work rates even. I know Thierry Henry is high medium or medium. I think it's medium. That's okay. But it's nice to have kind of big, strong guys here, just physically strong guys, just so then they can actually get up and down the field and then make tackles, even if they're not, very defensive. Like Thierry Henry, he's at least 6'2" and has a physical frame to actually try to bully people, right? So we have them on comeback on defense, and, when you attack, they literally go up to play left and right wing. So if you have this formation, be sure to make some subs at some time, or be prepared to make some subs. Just keep that in mind. And then for the center attacking mid and the strikers, again, I have the center attacking mid on stay forward because of the reason I mentioned for the 4-2-3-1. It seems as though the center attacking mid tends to drop back to left back or left mid for some reason. So I need them on stay forward. Plus, we have all these other guys on kind of stay back, so it just provides an outlet for the center attacking mid, which is nice. And then for both the strikers, we have them on get and behind. Mainly because then, since we have our center attacking mid on stay forward, we want our strikers even a little bit further up. So then when we are attacking, it's going to be the strikers getting the ball, or essentially, getting the ball in the box or for a counterattack, right? That way it's not the center attacking mid running past the strikers, and then there's no link between the defensive mids and then the attackers. So that is it for the instructions. Hopefully you guys learned something for this, and hopefully they will help you for, weekend league and for foot champs or just division rivals in general. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments down below and I'll try to help you guys out. But that was going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. This has been DMG. Peace.